And to the human Peleus we gave his bridal mate, because he had the immortal's love. Because he had the immortal's love. To celebrate the feast of their high nuptials, every god was glad to be a guest, and thou fedst of thy father's cates, touching thy harp. And thou fedst of thy father's cates, touching thy harp in grace of that beginning of our friend, whom thy perfidious face in his perfection blusheth not to match with Priam's son. Oh, that to betray and shame blusheth not to match with Priam's son. To match with Priam's son. Oh, that to betray and shame art still O thou, that to betray and shame art still companion. Let's bring Jupiter, and we'll just pull in a couple of the guaranteed. Achilles, Priam, Hecuba, Iris. That's good for now. And Thetis. And my power to give it act, approve. Okay. art still companion. Jove thus answered her. Never give these broad terms to a god. These two men shall not be compared. And yet, of all that trod the well-paved Ilion, none so dear to all the deities as Hector was. At least to me, for offerings of most prize his hands would never pretermit. Hold on, this mouse is not somehow got disconnected here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, we have to check this word pretermit. Pretermit? To leave undone or neglect. Pretermit. All right, let's put it in book 24 pronunciations. And my power to give it act, approve. At least to me, the well-paved Ilion, none so dear to all the deities as Hector was. At least to me, for offerings most of prize his hands would never pretermit. Our altars ever stood furnished with banquets fitting us. Banquets fitting us, odors, and every good furnished with banquets fitting us, odors, and every good smoked in our temples. And for this, foreseeing it, his fate we marked with honor, which must stand. But to give stealth estate in his deliverance, shun we that, nor must we favor one to shame another. Privily with wrong to Thetis' son, we must not work out Hector's right. There is a ransom due, and open course by laws of arms, in which must humbly sue the friends of Hector, which just means if any god would stay and use the other. any god would stay and use the other, 'twould not serve. For Thetis night and day is guardian to him. But would one call Iris guardian to him. But would one call Iris hither, I would give directions for the gifts. I would give directions for But would one call Iris hither, I would give directions for gifts the Trojan king should buy his. I would give directions that for gifts the Trojan king should buy his Hector's body, with the son, his Hector's body, which the son of Thetis shall resign. Body, which the son of Thetis shall resign. This said, his will was done. Shall resign. This said, his will was done. The dame that doth in vapors shine, dewy and thin, footed with storms, jumped to the sable seas, twixt Samos and sharper Imber's cliffs. The lake. Let's just check. That's Samos. Imber. I usually call it Imbros. Here he's calling it Imber. Or rather, instead of Imber, it's Imber, I say. Sable seas twixt Samos and sharp Imber's cliffs. The lake, sharp Imber's cliffs. The lake groaned with the press of her rough feet, and plummet-like put in an ox's horn that bears death to the raw-fed fish. Dewy and thin, footed with storms, jumped to the sable seas twixt Samos and sharp Imber's cliffs. The lake groaned with the press of her rough feet, and plummet-like put in an oxen's horn that bears death to the raw-fed fish. She dived, and found forlorn Thetis lamenting her son's fate, who was in Troy to have, far from his country, his death served. Close to her Iris stood, and said, O Priam, thou art always pleased. Deaths. And found forlorn Thetis lamenting her son's fate, who was in Troy to have, far from his country, his death served. Close to her Iris stood, and said, Rise, Thetis, prudent Jove, whose counsels thirst not blood, calls for thee. Thetis answered her with asking, Why weeps my son? Calls for thee. Thetis answered her with asking, What's the cause the great god calls? My sad powers feared to break the immortal laws in going filed with griefs. To heaven. But he sets snares for none with colored counsels. Not a word of him, but he sets snares for none with colored counsels. Not a word of him, but shall be done. Not a word of him, but shall be done. She said, and took a sable veil, a blacker never wore a heavenly shoulder, and gave way. Swift Iris, she said, and took a sable veil, a blacker never wore a heavenly shoulder, and gave way. Swift Iris swum before, gave way. Swift Iris swum before. About both rolled the brackish waves. They took their banks and flew up to Olympus, where they found Saturnius far of view, sphered with heaven's ever-being states. Minerva rose and gave her place to Thetis near Jove, and Juno did receive her entry with a cup of gold, in which she drank to her, graced her with comfort, and the cup to her hand did refer. She drank, resigning it. And then the sire of men and gods thus entertained her. Men and gods thus entertained her. And my power to give it act thus entertained her. Comest thou up to these our blessed abodes, fair goddess Thetis? Comest thou up to these our blessed abodes, fair goddess Thetis? Yet art sad, and that in so high kind as passeth sufferance, and that in so high kind as passeth sufferance. This I know, and tried thee, and now find thy will by mine ruled, which is to rule all world's government. Besides this trial yet, this cause sent down for thy assent. 9 days contention hath been held amongst the immortals here for Hector's person and thy son. And some advices were to have our good spy Mercury steal from thy son the course. But that reproach I kept far off, to keep in future force thy former love and reverence. Haste then, and tell thy son the gods are angry, and myself take that wrong he hath done to Hector in worst part of all, the rather since he still detains his person. Charge him then, if he respect my will for any reason, to resign slain Hector. I will send Iris to Priam to redeem his son, and recommend fit ransom to Achilles' grace, in which right he may joy and end his vain grief. And end his vain grief. To this charge bright Thetis did employ instant endeavor. From heaven's tops she reached Achilles' tent, found him still sighing, and some friends with all their complement soothing his humor. Other some with all contention dressing his dinner. Other some with all contention dressing his dinner. All their pains and skills consumed upon a huge wool-bearer, slaughtered there. His reverend mother then came near, took kindly his fair hand, and asked him, Why weeps my son? Took kindly his fair hand, and asked him, Dear son, when will sorrow leave thee? How long time wilt thou wilt thou thus eat thy heart, fed with no other food nor rest? 'Twere good thou wouldst divert thy friend's love to some lady, cheer thy spirits with such kind parts as she can quit thy grace withal. The joy of thy deserts I shall not long have. Death, the joy of thy deserts I shall not long have. Death is near, and thy all-conquering fate, whose haste thou must not haste with grief, but understand the state of things belonging to thy life, which quickly order. I am sent from Jove to advertise thee that every deity is angry with thee, himself most, that rage thus reigns in thee, still to keep Hector. Quit him then, and for fit ransom free his injured person. He replied, Let us ask some. Let him come that shall give the ransom and the person take. Jove's pleasure must deprive men of all pleasures. Let him come that shall give the ransom and the person take. Jove's pleasure must deprive men of all pleasures. This good speech and many more the son and mother used in ear of all the naval station. And now to holy Ilion Saturnius Iris sent. And my power to give it act. The naval station, and all the naval station. And now to holy Ilion Saturnius Iris sent. Go, swift-foot Iris, bid Troy's king bear fit gifts, and content Achilles for his son's release. But let him greet alone the Grecian navy, not a man, excepting such a one as may his horse and chariot guide, a herald, or one old attending him, and let him take his Hector. Be he bold, discourage not with death nor fear. Wise Mercury shall guide his passage till the prince be near, and he gone, let him ride resolved, even in Achilles' tent. He shall not touch the state, even in Achilles' tent. Resolved even in Achilles' tent. He shall not touch the state of his high person. Nor admit the deadliest desperate of all about him. For though fierce, he is not yet unwise. Of all about him. For, though fierce, he is not yet unwise, nor inconsiderate, nor a man past awe of deities, but passing free and curious to do a suppliant grace. This said, the rainbow to her feet tied whirlwinds. Suppliant grace. This said, the rainbow to her feet tied whirlwinds, and the place and the place reached instantly. This said, the rainbow to her feet tied whirlwinds, and the place reached instantly. The heavy court clamor and mourning filled. The sons all set about the sire, and there stood grief, and still tears on their garments. In the midst the old king sate, his weed all wrinkled, head and neck, dust filled. The princess, his seed, the princess's... dust filled. The princesses, his seed, the princesses, his sons' fair wives, all mourning by. The thought of friends so many, and so good, being turned so soon to naught by Grecian hands, consumed their youth, rained beauty from their eyes. Iris came near the king, her sight shook all his faculties, and therefore spake she soft, and said, O Priam, thou art... 1, 2, 3. Iris came near the king, her sight shook all his faculties, and therefore spake she soft, and said, Be glad, Dardanides, be glad, Dardanides, of good currents, Dardanides, be glad, Dardanides, of good currents, and none ill am I ambassadress, of good occurrence, and none ill am I ambassadress. Jove greets thee, who in care as much as he is distant, deigns eye to thy sorrows, pitying thee. My embassy contains this charge to thee from him. He wills thou shouldst redeem thy son, bear gifts to Achilles, cheer him so. But visit him alone, none but some herald let attend, thy mules and chariot to manage for thee. Fear nor death let daunt thee, Jove hath got Hermes to guide thee. Fear nor death let daunt thee, Jove hath got Hermes to guide thee, who as near to Thetis' son as needs shall guard thee. And being once with him, nor his nor others' deeds stand touched with, he will all contain. Nor is he mad, nor vain, nor impious, but with all his nor impious, but with all his nerves studious to entertain. One that submits with all fit grace. I can't remember if I actually wrote which way I pronounce impious/impious. I did not write it down, but I'm pretty sure I did it as impious because of the way he forced the rhyme in one part. So I'm just doing both readings so that I can use it later if I need it. But with all his nerves studious, nor is he mad, nor stand touched with, he will all contain. Nor is he mad, nor vain, nor impious, but with all his nerves studious to entertain one that submits with all fit grace. Thus vanished she like the wind. Thus vanished she like wind. He mules and chariot calls, his sons bids His sons bid see them joined, and bind a trunk behind it. He himself down to his wardrobe goes, built all of cedar, highly roofed and odoriferous. His wardrobe goes, built all of cedar, highly roofed and odoriferous, that much stuff worth the sight contained. To him he called his queen, thus greeting her. Come, love daughter, sit by me. Called his queen, thus greeting her. Come, hapless dame, and angel. Come, hapless dame. Come, hapless dame, an angel I have seen, sent down from Jove, that bade me free our dear son from the fleet with ransom pleasing to our foe. What holds thy judgments meet? What holds thy judgment meet? My strength and spirit lays high charge on all my being to bear the Greeks' worst, venturing through their host. The queen cried out to hear his venturous purpose, and replied, Is it not because the cursed nation afflict our countrymen? Their host. The queen cried out to hear his venturous purpose, and replied, Oh, whither now is fled the late discretion? Oh, whither now is fled the late discretion that renowned thy grave and knowing head in foreign and thine own ruled realms, that thus thou darest say sight of that man, in whose brow sticks the horrible decay of sons so many and so strong. Thy heart is iron, I think, if this stern man, whose thirst of blood makes cruelty his drink, take or but see thee, thou art dead. He nothing pities woe, nor honors age. Without his sight we have enough to do to mourn with thought of him. Keep we our palace, weep we here. Our son is past our helps. Those throes that my deliverers were of his unhappy lineaments told me they should be torn with Blackfoot dogs. Almighty fate, that black hour he was born, spun in his springing thread that end. Almighty fate, that black hour he was born, spun in his springing thread that end. Far from his parents' reach, this bloody fellow then ordained to be their mean, this wretch whose stony liver I would to heaven I might devour. My teeth, my son's revengers made. Cursed Greek, he gave him not his death doing an ill work. He alone fought for his country. He fled not, nor feared, but stood his worst, and cursed policy was his undoing. 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 He replied, Come, love daughter. He replied, Whatever was his end is not our question. We must now use all means to defend his end from scandal. From which act dissuade not my just will, nor let me From which act dissuade not my just will, nor let me nourish in my house a bird presaging ill to my good actions. 'Tis in vain. 'Tis in vain. 'Tis in vain. Had any earthly spirit given this suggestion, if our priests or soothsayers challenging merit of prophets, I might hold it false, and be the rather moved to keep my palace. But these ears and these self-eyes approved. It was a goddess. I will go, for not a word she spake I know was idle. If it were, and that my fate will make quick riddance of me at the fleet. Kill me, Achilles. Come, when getting to thee, I shall find a happy dying room on Hector's bosom. When enough thirst of my tears finds there quench to his fervor. This resolved, the works most fair and dear of his rich screens he brought abroad. This resolved, the works most fair and dear of his rich screens he brought abroad. 12 veils wrought curiously, 12 plain gowns, 12 plain gowns, and as many suits of wealthy tapestry, as many mantles, horsemen's coats, 10 talents of fine gold, 2 tripods, cauldrons 4, a bowl whose value he did hold beyond all price, presented by the ambassadors of Thrace. The old king nothing held too dear to rescue from disgrace his glorious Hector. Forth he came. At entry of his court, the Trojan citizens so pressed that this opprobrious sort of check he used. Hence, castaways, away, ye impious crew! Are not your griefs enough at home? What come ye here to view? Care ye for my griefs? Would ye see how miserable I am? Is it not enough, imagine ye? Ye might know, ere ye came, what such a son's loss weighed with me. But know this for your pains. Your houses have the weaker doors. The Greeks will find their gains the easier for his loss, be sure. But oh Troy, ere I see thy ruin, let the doors of hell. Let the doors of hell receive and ruin me. For his loss, be sure. But, O Troy, ere I see thy ruin, let the doors of hell receive and ruin me. Thus, with his scepter set he on the crowding citizens, who gave back, seeing him so urge. And now he entertains his sons as roughly. And now he entertains his sons as roughly. Helenus, Paris, Hippothous, Pammon, divine Agathonies, Hippothous, Deiphobus, Agavis, Antiphanes, as roughly. Helenus, Paris, Hippothous, Pammon, divine Agathonies, renowned Deiphobus, Agavis, and Antiphonus, and Antiphonus, and Antiphonus, and last, not least in arms, and last, not least in arms, the strong Polites. The strong Polites. These 9 sons, the violence of his harms, these 9 sons, the violence of his harms, helped him to vent in these sharp violence of his harms, helped him to vent in these sharp terms. Haste, you infamous brood. Haste, you infamous brood, and get my chariot. Would to heaven that all the abject blood in all your veins had Hector skeused. O me, accursed man, all my good sons are gone. My light the shades Cimmerian have swallowed from me. I have lost Mestor, surnamed the Fair, Troilus, that ready knight-at-arms, that made his field repair ever so prompt and joyfully. Troilus, that ready knight-at-arms, that made his field repair ever so prompt and joyfully. And Hector, amongst men esteemed a god, not from a mortal seed, but from the eternal strain. But of the eternal strain he seemed to all eyes. These are gone. You that survive are base, liars, and common freebooters, all faulty, not a grace, but in your heels, in all your parts dancing companions ye are excellent. Hence, ye brats, love ye to hear my moans. Will ye not get my chariot? Command it quickly, fly, that I may perfect this dear work. This all did terrify, and straight his mule-drawn chariot came. To which they fast did bind the trunk with gifts, and then came forth with an afflicted mind old Hecuba. In her right hand a bowl of gold she bore, with sweet wine crowned, stood near, and said, Is it not because the cursed nation afflict our country? With sweet wine crowned, stood near, and said, Receive this, and implore with sacrificing it to Jove thy safe return. I see thy mind likes still to go, though mine dislikes it utterly. Pray to the black cloud-gathering god, Idaean Jove, that vows all Troy and all her miseries, Idaean Jove, that views all Troy and all her miseries, that he will deign to use his most loved bird to ratify thy hopes, that her broad wing spread of thy right hand, thou mayst know thy zealous offering accepted, and thy safe return confirmed. And thy safe return confirmed. But if he fail thy intent. Though never it so labors to prevail. If he fail thy intent, though never he so labors it to prevail. Though never so it labors to prevail. This I refuse not, he replied, for no faith is so great in Jove's high honor, but it must be held up. So great in Jove's high favor, but it must be held up. but it must with held-up hands entreat. Jove's high favor, but it must with held-up hands entreat. This said, the chambermaid that held the ewer and basin This said, the chambermaid that held the ewer and basin by, he bade pour water on his hands. When looking to the sky, he took on his hand. He bade pour water on his hands. When looking to the sky, he took the bowl, did sacrifice, and thus implored. O Jove, from Ida, thus implored. O Jove, from Ida, using thy commands, in all deserts above all other gods, vouchsafe me safe, and pity in the sight of great Achilles, and for trust to that wished grace, excite thy swift-winged messenger, most strong, most of air's region loved, to soar on my right hand, which sight may firmly see approved thy former summons, and my speed, thy former summons, and my speed. He prayed, and heaven's king heard, and instantly cast from his fist, airs all commanding bird, the black-winged huntress, perfectest of all fowls, which gods call Perknos, the eagle. Perknos. Of all fowls, which gods call Perknos, the eagle. And how broad the chamber nuptial of any mighty man hath doors, such breadth of any mighty man hath doors, such breadth cast either wing, which now she used and spread them wide, on right hand of the king. All saw it and rejoiced, and up to chariot he arose, drave forth the portal. All saw it and rejoiced, and up to chariot he arose, drave forth the portal and the porch. Chariot he arose, drave forth the portal and the chariot, the portal and the porch resounding as he goes. His friends all followed him as he goes. His friends all followed him and mourned him. As if he went to die. And bringing him past town to field, all left him. And the eye of Jupiter was then his guard, who pitied him and used these words to Hermes. Interesting that he calls him Hermes. And my power to give it act approved. Who pitied him and used these words to Hermes. Mercury, thy help hath been profused ever. These words to Hermes. Mercury, thy help hath been profused ever with most grace in consorts of travelers distressed. Most grace in consorts of travelers distressed. Most grace in consorts of travelers distressed. Now consort Priam to the fleet, but so that not the least suspicion of him be attained, till at Achilles' tent the convoy hath arrived him safe. This charge incontinent he put in practice. To his feet his feather This charge incontinent he put in practice. This charge incontinent he put in practice. To his feet his feathered shoes he tied, immortal, and made all of gold, with which he used to ride the rough sea and the unmeasured earth, and equalled in his pace the puffs of wind. Then took he up his rod that hath in his pace the puffs of wind. Then took he up his rod that hath the grace. Then took he up his rod that hath the grace to shut what eyes he. Then took he up his rod that hath the grace to shut what eyes he lists with sleep. And open them again in strongest trances. This he held, flew forth, and did attain to Troy and Hellespontus straight. Then, like a fair young prince, first down-chinned, and of such grace as makes his looks convince contending eyes to view him. Forth he went to meet the king. He, having passed the mighty tomb of Ilus, watering his mules in Xanthus, the dark even fell on the earth. And then Idaeus, guider of the mules, discerned this grace of men, and spake afraid to Priamus. All right, we need a voice for Idaeus. Actually, we do have Idaeus' voice, although there's a really excellent novel that is called Ransom, where the idea in that one is that the Idaeus who speaks in this part is not the same Idaeus who makes the pronouncement to the Greeks, the Achaeans, earlier in the story. But we're not going to use that concept. Although I really do love that story. Who did that? It starts with an M. David Malouf. I believe he's an Australian writer. Highly recommended. It basically dramatizes just this portion of Book 24. And the man that proves victorious, and then Idaeus, guider of the mules, discerned this grace of men, and spake afraid to Priamus. Beware, Dardanides, our states ask counsel. I discern the dangerous excess of some man near us. Now I fear we perish. Is it best to fly, or kiss his knees and ask his ruth of men distressed? Is it best to fly? Is it best to fly, or kiss? Is it best to fly, or kiss his knees and ask his ruth of men distressed?